Hello everyone, it is Joe here from OmniPoke, the channel that brings you guys everything Pokemon, and hopefully you can see my face right now, trying out the old face cam thing. Should be in one of the top corners or something like that. I can't remember where I put myself now. But hopefully you guys all enjoy that. I know it's been something me and Jack have wanted to do for a while, and we're also trying to test this out to see if we can get it recording nicely, so that we can move on to Twitch as well, and all of that good stuff. So this is going to be Expanded Friday, as always, and we are going to be playing Archie Stoise, a deck which for some reason isn't on our channel already, despite it being a world-winning deck and a deck that's continued to do well throughout Expanded over the last few months in City Championships and other tournaments like that. So today we are looking at the deck. It's a pretty standard list. Most Archie Stoise decks have a skeleton of about 50 odd cards. Not much room for text or anything like that, but just with the last video I'm going to try and throw in a few tech options that you could be playing and stuff like that as we run down the list. So here we go. We'll start with the Pokemon. Keldeo EX is the main attacker of the deck, 170 HP, you know, kind of meh. The Russian ability is absolutely phenomenal. It means we can switch into the active Pokemon whenever we want. It means that we can get around status conditions from stuff like Hypnotoxic Laser, which we know is popular in Toad decks and in Yveltal decks in Expanded, so that's pretty important. And also it just helps us if we have not very useful starting Pokemon. We only play a few basics in here, so oftentimes we're going to start with something less preferable, so we can just rush in with Keldeo and get attacking with him from there. So we can find him later on in the turn and still have the option to attack with him on the same turn, which is pretty cool. Then we have the Secret Sword attack. It's for 3 colourless energy. Obviously we play all basic water in here, so we're going to try and use Deluge to get those on board. 20 more damage for each water attached with the base of 50, so it goes up and up and up. Essentially we have an unlimited damage cap, so that we can one-hit EXs, and that's basically the whole premise of the deck. Stack a bunch of energy onto Keldeo and hit in the face, turn after turn. Pretty simple stuff. So obviously backing him up we have the Blastoise, one of the most important cards in the deck. Deluge allows us to attach as many waters or energy as we like during our turn from the hand, so that's pretty important. 140 HP, you know, it's kind of meh. People don't really catch him up because they're so far behind on prize trade at that point, because Keldeo will still be on the board with 7 or 8 energy that we can just, you know, rush them down without a Blastoise. So pretty good to just keep him on the bench. Most people just ignore him. That's kind of the way it goes. Chunky 4 retreat cost again, so if he is Lysandred up. But we do have rush-ins, so it's not really too big of an issue unless we are under Garbed or Lock at the same time. So we do have the Hydro Pump attack for an extra colourless to the Keldeo. It does 60 plus 10 more for each water, so it is a mini Keldeo. And if we really need to get around something like Regice, we can commit to a Blastoise. Not very preferable, but against like a Manectric player, we can do it with Blastoise because he's got enough HP to tank a Mega EX's attack. So that's pretty decent. Good to be aware of that. Couple more backup attackers. We do have Articuno in here, 120 HP, and it has this Delta Plus, meaning that when Articuno takes a knockout, we get to take an additional prize card. This is absolutely essential for when we're up against non-EX decks like Night March and Vespiquen, where Keldeo isn't very important because even if we do stack up huge Keldeos, like it's just overkill at that point, and training 2 for 1 is never so good. Now we're using a non-EX that can take 2 prizes, so it effectively makes it as if they were an EX, even though they're not. So Tri-Edge does 20 plus 40 more, and we get to flip 3 coins for that 40 extra damage. So pretty good. We kill Night Marchers for just 1 heads flip, which is nice. 2 heads flips gets us into the range of Vespiquens and stuff like that, so pretty good. We also have the Chilling Psy attack, sending our opponent's active Pokemon to sleep. Rarely useful because Keldeo is in almost every deck, so we rarely ever catch anyone off guard. But if maybe Toad's had a weaker start, they haven't found like their Hooper yet, or maybe Hooper's prized, we can maybe catch a Toad sleeping and buy ourselves a turn of trainers. That's very wishful thinking, but it's something to be aware of. If we are being hit with a Toad, there's not many other things the deck can do at that point, so going for it with Articuno might not be the worst idea. We have 2 eggs in here. Propagation is really helpful for helping the maths for Archie's Ace in the Hole, which is of course the main point of the deck. And also we are playing for Superior Energy Retrieval, to help recovering our water when Keldeos do get knocked out, or Articunos. So it's good to have those basically for free because we propagate twice and then discard them away straight away with Superior, which is cool. We have 2 Jirachi so that we can try and get into that Archies as quickly as possible, and we do have just 1 and 2 of all of our supporters, so being able to Stellar Guidance into them is nice all the time. And for the same reason we have Shaymin EX. If we don't have a perfect Archies in our hand, but we do have something like Ultra Ball, we can Ultra Ball and try and up our hand back to 6 and then try and reduce it once again with the things that we top deck into. So Shaymin as well, helping us get the turn 1 Archies. That's basically the whole idea of the deck. Get the Archies turn 1, you're going to be in good shape for most of the games that you play against. Just because it's such a powerful board state so early in the game. That not many decks can cope with that, and that's the whole premise of the deck, really. The final card we're playing is a Victini. This is the Victory Star Victini, which allows us to reflip coins. So that's pretty cool. We use it obviously in conjunction with Articuno, because Tri-Edge is such an important attack, so that we can kill stuff like Vespiquen and keep up in prize trade. Absolutely phenomenal, so it's very good to have Fliptini to optimize these as best we can. Maybe we've rolled 3 tails, or maybe we're looking for 2 heads, and it needs to be now to like finish out a game or something like that. So Articuno can be clutch there. It's also important to note that against Donphan and also Fighting Bats or like Landorus, we do have this resistance, which is really cool. It makes Articuno a real tank for them to get around, especially because we do have Rough Season here as well that we can use. So Articuno is really nice against those fighting-based decks. So let's look at the trainers. It's all very simple. Lots of 4-ofs for the important stuff, and then minimizing basically 1s and 2-ofs of things that are less important but still, needed in the deck. So A-Spec, of course, is going to be Comp Search, trying to figure out the hand math. Comp Search lets us discard 2, and then we get to find another card. Could potentially be an Ultra Ball to get rid of another 2, which then gets us into a Jirachi, which gets us an instant Archies. It could be for something like Battle Compressor to throw away the Blastoise, all these sorts of combinations. If you do have Comp Search in your hand, you're normally going to get the Archies, as long as you plan out your turn. It's pretty easy to get it. We are playing one Professor's Letter, helping us find these basic energies as quickly as possible. Flooding the field of waters is important for when we do have Deluge available. Obviously, a lot of decks are playing Hex Maniac, so we want to flood the field of energy while we can, basically almost go all in as quickly as possible, so that when we are hit with Hex Maniacs, it's less detrimental to us. So there we are. We do have one Tool Scrapper in the deck. This is for stuff like Sableye Garbodor. If we can Tool Scrapper and then we can get a Keldeo built up with 6 or so energy, we're probably going to win, because no matter how many times they go for the Crushing Hammer, we're going to keep so much energy on Keldeo that it can keep just smashing the face enough to win us the game. Even potentially then we can attach a bunch of energy, Lysandre up Garbodor, kill it, and then we have a few more turns of our abilities, and we're probably going to win from there. So it's pretty important to have this one of. If you're more worried about Toad Garb or something like that, you might want to change this to a Xerosic, but it's very important to have a low support count in here, because you really don't want to have things that clog. We do have 2 tools in the deck ourselves, so even if we are going on our first turn and we run into Tool Scrapper, there's a chance that we've already hit a tool, so we can just discard one of our own to be an almost automatic -1. So kind of detrimental to do that, but if we are searching for the Archies, it's something that we might have to consider. So an almost 3-of, we're playing Acro Bike. I'd love to have 4, but you just got to make space for other stuff in here. I cut the 4th Acro for the Tool Scrapper just to give us that slight edge in a matchup with Garbodor. So Acro Bike is nice. I've heard people talk about Unknown. That's one of the techs I'll get onto in a moment. So there's a bit of a debate around Acro Bike compared to Unknown, because Acro Bike forces you to take a card no matter what. However, you get to choose one of 2, and over half the deck is a good out for you to pick up. So really, I think Acro Bike is pretty strong in here. So the 4-ofs, Battle Compressor, very important one. It's going to throw away Blastoise and one of your 2 Archies in the deck most of the time, and then you can start throwing away eggs. You can start throwing away water energy so that Superior gets very strong. Speaking of that card, we are maxing out Superior Energy Retrieval. Like I said, it's recycling for Keldeo. It's also lowering our hand size early to get the Archies. a lot of good stuff going on here. Superior is one of your most precious resources in the deck. 4 trainers mail. We play a total of 35 trainers. We're often going to hit good stuff, and it just keeps us cycling. If we need it to be, it can be an instant -1 because we choose to take nothing. And when we hit the good stuff, we can again help ourselves get the Archie going. 4 Ultra Ball to again discard one of our best discard cards we have, and at the same time we can find ourselves Jirachi, or we can find ourselves Shaymin to figure out what we need. Alternatively, we're finding one of these other things to help us increase our damage, maybe with Victini, or help us actually find attackers, which is also important. We are playing the 4 VS Seeker. Obviously, we're combining it to get more solid Archies. That's pretty simple. So supporter line, we're playing the 2 Archies so that we don't prize them, hopefully, and also so that if they are both in deck, we can comfortably get rid of one and still have one in the deck, so that if later on down the line in our turn, we can still use Stellar Guidance to get out of the deck. So it's very important to play 2. Similar reasons why we play Juniper, really. You want to play 2 because it's so detrimental if it is prized, and also, so we can do the Stellar Guidance plus VS Seeker tricks. Juniper, pretty good. We do have the 1 N for disruption for late game. If you are sat there with a Keldeo with 7 energy and you hit them with an N, it's going to be very difficult for them to respond to Keldeo, and then Keldeo claims 4 prizes rather than 2 prizes, and you pretty much win from there, so that's pretty awesome. And Lysandre, of course, we want to pick off EXs as best we can with Keldeo, and we can also pick off lower HP stuff with Articuno, so all around good shenanigans there with Lysandre. We are playing 1 Rough Seas. It's our only real counter stadium to something like Silent Lab, which stops our Jirachis and our Shaymins, which is a real pain, and it also stops Rush-In. So stuff like Blastoise can get caught in the active position, which we don't really like. Also, of course, it's going to be healing, so it's nice for making it more awkward for Keldeo to get knocked out. Some things that would be 2-shotting, like a Y-Cyclone, they don't have the luxury to do that because we can Rough Seas that off, and then they're stuck in a situation where they still need to Evil Ball us, so that's a nice little stadium that we can have just to replace others more than anything. You don't want to play more than 1, even though it does seem like a really nice card, because if you've gone through your turn, you've already put down 1 Rough Seas and you draw into a second stadium, you can't replace it in the same turn, so that could harm your chances of an Archie. So can't have more than 1, but it is nice to have. We are playing the 1 Floatstone. It's going to help us when we are against Garbodor. We can Floatstone a Blastoise rather than Keldeo because we don't have that Rush-In available. So putting it on Blastoise, he is our chunkiest dude. So getting that on him is nice. In most other matchups, it's going to be on Keldeo so that we can just move in and out of paralysis, poison, and stuff for free. Pretty good stuff. 1 Muscle Band. This isn't so much for Keldeo, although it can be helpful. It's just 1 less energy that we need to find. But normally this is going to be slapped onto Articuno. Now Tri-Edge has a base of 40, so you're instantly killing Joltix, and you're much easier. It's going to be much easier for you to kill Shaymin. Now you only need 2 heads flips. So a lot of good numbers there that help us out. So Articuno is pretty cool. It also makes it easier for us to kill Regice. It means again just 2 flips to get that knockout. So good stuff there. Again, you don't really want more than 1 because of situations in the hand where you can't get rid of it. I've debated putting this up to 2. That's one of the things I would have done. But before you go up to 2 Muscle Band, I would definitely go for a Victini over that. So if at the moment you have 2 Muscle Band and 0 Victini, it's worth having 1 of each, because overall Victini is going to get you more damage from reflipping than just a Muscle Band will do. Even though Muscle Band's guaranteed damage, just the more flips is just better, I guess, for the Articuno, because you've seen your first 3 flips, and like Muscle Band's never going to change that. But Victini might, so there we are. Then we have the 11 Water Energy. I think 11 is pretty much the number that people go for. 10 or 11. I think if you are playing Fisherman, you can go down to 10, but for me, I like having 11. Even though we have Letter, we just have so many outs to it. We normally dump at least 3, maybe 4, just from compressors alone, to thin out the deck from bad draws and stuff like that. So pretty important stuff there. So let's move into some techs that we could be playing. I'll start off with Pokemon. There's a few things that we can go for here. First is going to be Kyurem. This is the Plasma Kyurem. This is a decent option. Again, it's one of these things, if you have 2 Muscle Band, it's really nice, because Frostbeard can KO things like Combees and some of the EVs with Muscle Band while setting up other things on the bench, which is pretty cool. Again, even without the Muscle Band, you set up multiple KOs. It's like the Kyogre EX, which I don't like in here. It's one that I'm not going to talk about because I don't think it's good enough to be put in here. The reason why I like this Kyurem a bit more is because he's kind of more versatile. We have the Blizzard Burn available to us because we can kill a Shaymin as a non-EX and again try and skew the prize trade against these Night Marchers and against Vespiquen. So if you're going to play Kyogre EX, I would prefer to put a Kyurem in here. Even then, I feel like at the moment 2 Articunos are enough to win those matchups. Another option is the big old whale himself. People are using this just for when Night March was kind of a thing. It's kind of dropping in popularity at the moment in Expanded. So Whale Lord's not too crucial, but if you are super worried about the Night March matchup, again, 2 Articuno should get you there, but Whale Lord can also do it. And additionally, just like I said with the Plasma Kyurem, he hits the good numbers to kill Shaymin EXs, and 250 HP, they're not really going to knock that out. We have Rush in Retreat to get out of our sleep after we use High Breaching, and hopefully then we can Lysandre, kill another Shaymin and win games. So Wailord's not actually terrible in this deck, believe it or not. He's also really good for buying you time against Toad, because it takes a while for them to kill you because of the amount of HP you have. Speaking of Seismitoad, one of the real cripples for this deck, if you don't get the turn 1 Archies and they punch you, you're almost dead. But this is a card that could stop that. Playing Jirachi in here, Stardust discarding that special, then we're immune. It's really awesome. It could stop our opponent using Punch, and if they do continue to use Quaking Punch, we can just do Stardust again. So we really put the Toad in an awkward situation for just one card in the deck. I feel like it's a really nice inclusion. In terms of space, it's one slot that isn't going to help you get the Archies, but a lot of the time for the bench space, you have space to put it down anyway, so it's almost a -1 for matchups where it's not so important. It's also pretty nice when you are getting hit with Hex Maniac, because it's just a single attachment, and it's just better than nothing often at times. The things that have space for Hex often are playing special energy themselves, so Jirachi can often have value, and I think it's something you should really consider. At the moment I've not put it in because this is more of a traditional list, but if you are struggling against stuff like Toad, you could slap in the Jirachi. So let's look at some supporters and trainers. One's going to be Fisherman. Again, it's one of these things for Toad. You can, because we don't have superior energy retrieval, we can use Fisherman. And effectively, if we do have the Fisherman in here, with 4 VS Seeker, we have a lot more superior energy retrievals potentially available to us. So it's a decent option if you really need that energy to keep coming back. Normally I feel like the 4 superior is going to get you through most games. However, Fisherman, again, for these Toad decks, you might want to have it in there as a precautionary thing. Let's talk about a card that's rarely ever seen in Blastoise, but I think it's not terrible. Parallel City. This could be used over your Rough Seas, in my opinion, because you can kill your own Shaymins and you can kill your own Jirachis, which are often big targets for the Blastoise player. So you're left with just like an Articuno, a Blastoise, and a Victini, and then you have your Keldeo. I think it's a decent option for you because it really takes away a win condition from your opponent. Just like ignore the Keldeo and trade 2 for 2, and sometimes they come up with a non-EX to kill a Jirachi, and then you're like behind. So Parallel City might not be the worst thing in the world. Also, it sort of reduces damage from like Toad, and it reduces damage from Vespiquen. Obviously, the Vespiquen's not going to be too big of a deal because they can easily hit 140, which is Articuno's HP, with the -20 on top of that. They're not going to struggle to hit that. But a Toad being -20 buys you a lot more time to maybe find your Jirachi or do something else to try and break that lock. So Parallel City is an interesting inclusion, which I've not seen a lot of people talk about, but I actually quite like it in here. The final one's a pretty simple one. This is one of these cards that you might want to play, you might not find the space for. Some of you swear by it in almost every deck, some people just don't like it in any deck. Town Map, it can help us get into these important cards, get us that superior out of the prizes, and then we can instantly use it the next turn. It can be beautiful, especially because we only have one Lysandre in this list and one N. It might be important enough to play Town Map to get those out of there, so it's one to consider for sure. But there we are, guys. That was the list and a few other tech options that you could think about when you start testing this for yourselves. And we'll be getting into some games shortly, so I'll see you then.